Trump's threat and maximalist demands ignore Iran's history, security fears, and distrust of Washington. A durable agreement requires time, restraint, and professional diplomacy, not a bombast, coercion, and calls for unconditional surrender that guarantee only resistance. Iran is not transient power that can be coerced into submission. It is a civilization with over 2,500 years of continuous history, shaped by deep sense of identity, resilience, and pride. From the philosophical legacy of Sina to the poetic brilliance of Hafiz and the scientific contribution of al-Khwarizmi, Iran's imprint on global civilizations is profound. Coupled with vast human and natural resources and commanding a geostrategic position, this history informs a national mindset that equates capitulation with existential defeat. To demand unconditional surrender, as Trump has, is not only diplomatically reckless, but culturally tone-deaf. Such a demand is inherently unacceptable to Iran and ensures resistance rather than compliance. This is not to suggest that the Islamic-led government is benevolent and deserves every consideration. The government has committed egregious human rights violations, systematically repressing its population. It has killed thousands during recent protests, carried out widespread arbitrary arrests, and imposed severe restrictions on women's rights. Political dissent is routinely crushed through imprisonments, torture, and executions, reflecting a pattern of state-sanctioned brutality that continues unabated. Negotiation requires mutual understanding. Nevertheless, effective negotiation does not require agreement with the other side behavior, ideology, or political posture, but it does require genuine effort, even by adversaries, to understand that their positions have been heard and seriously considered. When a counterpart senses dismissal or indifference, they become far less inclined to engage, let alone compromise. Listening, therefore, is not concession, it is strategic necessity. By acknowledging the legitimacy of the other side's interest, even while contesting them, a negotiator creates the minimal trust required for negotiation to make progress. The absence of trust. Iran's deep distrust of the United States, particularly under Trump, stems from a pattern of actions that have steadily eroded credibility. The withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018, the assassination of General Soleimani in January 2020, and twice striking Iran, even in the midst of negotiations in June 2025 and February 2026, have reinforced Tehran's belief that Trump cannot be trusted. No party will negotiate seriously when it anticipates duplicity at a critical juncture. Moreover, Trump's pattern of threatening to annihilate Iran, to bomb it back to the Stone Age, and his repeated threats to attack civilian infrastructure, electrical grids, bridges, as leverage to reach a deal in a day or two is absurd, given the complexity and the far-reaching implications of the negotiations. Such coercion only deepens mistrust, hardens resistance, and effectively forecloses any realistic prospect for reaching a durable agreement. Trump's rhetoric does not project strength, it signals recklessness and contempt, confirming to Iran's leadership that the United States is willing to inflict indiscriminate harm. This reflects a fundamentally flawed approach to negotiation, as Iran sees little incentive to compromise with a counterpart it views as both hostile and untrustworthy, compounding its pre-existing distrust. Trust, however, cannot be demanded or negotiated. It must be carefully nurtured over time. For Iran to consider significant concessions, it must first feel secure. That requires credible assurances that the United States will refrain from military action and prevent Israeli strikes. Only within such a framework of guaranteed restraint can a fragile foundation of trust begin to emerge. Iran's national security concerns. Iran does not seek a usable nuclear arsenal so much as the capability to assemble one quickly, creating a powerful deterrent against adversaries. In Tehran's strategic thinking, latent nuclear capability, rather than overt weaponization, offers insurance against regime-threatening attacks while avoiding the full international backlash that an open bomb program would trigger. Iranian allies also draw lessons from Ukraine, which surrendered the Soviet nuclear arsenal it inherited under the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. Russia likely would not have invaded had Ukraine retained its nuclear weapons. Iran likewise notes that Kim Jong-un's growing arsenals has effectively shielded his regime from serious existential threat or regime change efforts. India and Pakistan, after 3 major conventional wars, have since limited their confrontation to skirmishes under the shadows of a nuclear deterrence. This experience reinforces Tehran's belief that only a credible nuclear option, the clear ability to build one, can prevent similar aggression, and that relinquishing such deterrence would require far-reaching security guarantees that makes Iran feel secure without nuclear shadow. Complex negotiations cannot be rushed. Serious negotiations with Iran involving layers of nuclear, regional, and security issues cannot be rushed through in a matter of days or weeks. The JCPOA took nearly 2.5 years to finalize, precisely because of its complexity and the depth of mistrust on both sides. Any administration that genuinely seeks a durable, comprehensive agreement must accept that time is not a luxury, but a prerequisite for success. If Trump wants a credible accord, he must hold hostilities, maintain the ceasefire throughout the talks, and allow trust to grow incrementally as negotiations proceed. Trying to force a deal on a short schedule cannot be taken seriously in Tehran. An accord reached under duress and against the clock will lack both legitimacy and staying power, and will almost certainly collapse at the first crisis. The concessions required of both the United States and Iran are inherently difficult to negotiate and will take time, yet they are fundamental to any viable agreement. To reach a viable agreement, Iran and the United States would need to take a series of concrete, verifiable steps that directly address the core security concern of both sides. Iran must immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz, to all commercial and military shipping and commit to sustained freedom of navigation. It must cease arming Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and allied militia in Iraq, and gradually scale back its offensive ballistic missile program under intrusive verification. Iran must also stop threatening Israel with genocidal rhetoric, which has been and continues to be the source of their intense hostility and one of the main sources of the region's instability, and ship out or downgrade a 60% enriched uranium stockpiles. In return, the United States must also remove its military blockades of the Strait of Hormuz and extend the ceasefire without stipulating an expiration date. It must recognize Iran's right to a civilian nuclear program under the strictest safeguards to ensure there is no diversion to weaponization. Washington should begin releasing Iran's frozen funds and gradually lift sanctions in a carefully calibrated manner tied to verified compliance. The United States must also formally pledge non-interference in Iran's domestic politics, renouncing regime change operations and covert destabilization, while reserving the right to speak out on human rights. If both sides fully adhere to this process over time, they can move towards structured discussion on the gradual normalizations of relations, including the restorations of diplomatic representation and expanded economic and cultural ties. Despite Trump's claim of victory, Iran emerged as the de facto winner in this confrontation with the United States and Israel, both of which failed to achieve regime change or spark a popular uprising. Instead, Iran leadership is now younger and more resolute. The conflict exposed the limits of the United States and Israeli military power, while Iran demonstrated resilience and its ability to disrupt the global oil flow through the Strait of Hormuz. In doing so, Tehran signaled that it is no longer a marginal actor, but a power to be reckoned with. To curb Iran extremism, the United States must abandon fantasies of regime change and recognize Tehran's security concerns and legitimate interests. Coercion and demands for capitulation only harden resistance. Stability requires reciprocal concessions and sustained diplomacy. Anything less will deepen confrontation, reinforce Iran's deterrence, and drive the region back into the brink.